Hello everyone and welcome back to 48 Now. I'm digital host AJ Wiest, and today I am joined with Dr. Rena Lott. She is a former Alabama A&M professor, and she has recently just published a brand new book. It's titled Meet Lucy Harris Stewart, the amazing basketball sensation. And Rena, first talk a little bit about your background as a former professor.
Well, I started even before then. I came, my husband and I came to Huntsville from Texas, where we were working on our terminal degrees. But I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, and so that's one of the reasons why Lucy was so interested in. I was so interested in Lucy because she's a Mississippian, and I am also. But I never heard of her. When I was in school in Mississippi, and I graduated from high school in 1974. And Lucy graduated from Amanda Elsie in Greenwood in 1973, so we're contemporaries. But I never knew Lucy because when I was in college, the sports figure that everybody talked about in the state was Walter Payton. Walter Payton went to Jackson State, and I went to Alcorn, and Jackson State and Alcorn were rivals, sports rivals. So the whole state talked about Walter State, and of course he went on to be a professional pro football player, and he's all I knew. My husband, who grew up in Greenwood, Mississippi, knew Lucy because they graduated from the same high school. He graduated from Amanda Elsie in 1974, and she graduated in 1973, and he had been talking about Lucy most of our marriage, but I didn't have anything to hang her name or information onto, so I never thought anything about it until she passed away. But before then, we left Texas. We were working on our terminal degrees, and we got fortunate enough, both of us got jobs at Alabama A&M University. I was in the elementary early childhood department, and he was in the music department. And so we stayed there, had 3 children in Huntsville, raised them, and I retired in 2015. And I was department chair for about 20 years and college professor for about 15 years there. Yeah.
Very awesome. And you said your husband had heard of Lucy.
He actually went to high school with her.
Really?
The high school was so small that the local newspaper, which was Greenwood Commonwealth, would publish the high school graduates every year. So it was a small high school. It's about 20 people that graduated, maybe more than that. They graduated every year. So they really knew each other. And she was a year ahead of him. So he really knew her, and she was a very good basketball player in high school. But she got national and international acclaim when she went to college.
Right, absolutely. And what made you take the next step in researching and writing about her?
Well, after Lucy died, she got a lot of national coverage because all the national sports commentators knew her because she had this national reputation already. And I was kind of surprised. This small school, Amanda Elsie, Greenwood, Mississippi. She actually grew up in Mentor City, Mississippi. And all these national, ESPN, all the national commentators were talking about Lucy Harris. So I said to my husband, did you know this girl, Lucy Harris, would graduate from Amanda? Of course I did, he said. And I've been talking to you about her for years. I said, I don't remember any of that. So I started doing research on her. And the more I researched her, the more interested I became in her. But I also wanted to write about her because really nobody knew her. And I thought people should know this outstanding athlete who had made a significant difference in women's basketball. Because women's basketball, when she played, it was kind of not really thought of as much of a sport. You know, nobody thought of women as much of thought that much about them being in basketball. But now, of course, everybody talks about women's basketball. So I wanted Lucy to have some of that spotlight if she could.
That's right. Yes, ma'am. And she's been deemed the queen of basketball.
Right.
She was drafted into the NBA, the first woman inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Right.
She was certainly a force on the court.
Right.
But who was Lucy Harris as a person?
Well, she was a humble, timid, soft-spoken person. So I think Pat Summitt, who coached the Lady Vaults in Tennessee, University of Tennessee, and was the winningest coach of her day by the time she retired. But she said of Lucy, she was the nicest, sweetest person. And that's the way she kind of left it. And most people said that about her. She was just a timid person off the court. But on the court, she was dominant and fierce and very competitive. So she was kind of like two people. Basketball was her game, and that's where she showed where she could really be aggressive. But she was pretty timid off the basketball court.
Right, absolutely. And talk about like the adversity she had to face, I'd imagine, being at Delta State in Mississippi as a black female athlete in the 70s.
Right. She grew up in a segregated environment. Richard Nixon signed Title IX, and Title IX increased, because Title IX existed, it increased the number of sports programs for women. So Lucy got very lucky. Delta State, who didn't have a sports program for 40 years, reinstated their program the year before she graduated from high school. So when she graduated from high school, Delta State was recruiting. And she was right up the road from Delta State, but she had never been to Delta State. And Melvin Hemphill was recruiting for Margaret Wade, who was the coach. And she really wanted to go to Alcorn, but Alcorn didn't have a program, and her coach at high school, Mr. Stewart, encouraged her to go to Delta State. So when she went to Delta State, it was a predominantly white environment, which she had never been in, and she was the only black on the team. And so it was a little awkward for her, but she had a really good disposition. I mean, she didn't dislike anybody, and because she didn't dislike anybody, nobody really disliked her. So she got along well with her teammates. She said she wasn't really friends with anybody, but everybody got along well. And I think as the years progressed, they became friends. She and most of the people on the court. As a matter of fact, the captain of the Delta State basketball team said, "If you don't like Lucy, it's your own fault." I mean, she was that sweet and that loving that, people just accepted her. And then she was so talented. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she really put Delta State on the map in sports.
That's awesome. And just talk about everything she was able to achieve while at Delta State.
That's pretty long.
I don't know if we have enough time.
Right. She was her freshman year at Delta State. They lost their last game was with Mercer University, and they lost to Mercer University in the state tournament. And so because they lost to Mercer University, they didn't get a good chance to go to regional. And because they didn't go to regional, they couldn't go to national. So she said they were all pissed off. They were all angry. They ended up with a record of 16-2. And so they had done very, very well, but they got stopped at state. And she said that they all said, if we did this well next year, we were going to national. And they all agreed, we're going to national. And so the next year is when it all started. I mean, they started out and they were just on a roll. I think just before national, they had a 24-0 record. When they went to national, they had a 29-0 record. And they got through, all the tournaments at national, and they end up playing against Immaculata University. Are you familiar with Immaculata University?
I am not.
Immaculata University is a Catholic school, and their basketball females dominated. They dominated the apparatus that oversaw the women basketball programs across the country at that time. It was not NCAA. NCAA at that time only looked at, only monitored male programs. And so everybody saw Immaculata as the best team out there. Mm-hmm. And so it didn't seem like Delta State could beat Immaculata, but they did get in the tournament. And then they ended up going against Immaculata. And Lucy pretty much dominated. I think she ended up with like 32 points and 18 rebounds, and they end up beating Immaculata. I think it was 98-76 or something like that. But it was a pretty close score, and it was an intense game. and it stunned everybody, and it made the papers all over the country. Because Immaculata it was just assumed that Immaculata would win.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that was their first national championship title, and Lucy was named most valuable player, and she also ended up on the first All American team, Kellogg's All American team.
Talk a bit about her going on to compete in the Olympics, the first Olympic Games for women's basketball.
Right. Before she went to the Olympics, she had been on the Pan American team, and she competed there, and they won the gold Pan American. And when the Olympics introduced basketball, everybody who's on that Pan American team got an opportunity to try out. So they got an automatic tryout, and they were only going to select 12. So she was selected as one of the 12 to be on the first Olympic women's basketball team. And she got there, and she talked about how amazing it was, because she was a girl from a small town in Mississippi. So to be in Montreal and to see all these other countries there, she just talked about what a great experience it was. There were 6 basketball teams at that time that played against. They all played against each other. So they all played round robin. They all played against each other. And that's something else I had to understand. Well, what do they mean by round robin? So they all played against each other. And the United States and Japan were the first game played at the Olympics. And Lucy ended up making the first goal at the Olympics, so she made history with that. But the United States lost to Japan, so they ended up having a end score. I think it was 6 teams. I think they ended up with a 4-1 or 4-2 record at the end. So the United States left with the the silver. Russia had the gold, because Russia had, the 7'2" Olympic player that just dominated, and they didn't lose any games. And their Olympic coach said, "We play like the men. The men play fast, and that's the way we play." And they had tall women also. That's another unique thing about Lucy for American women. Lucy was one of the tallest females at that time to play basketball. So now the females that play basketball, almost all of them was over 6 feet. But at the time, Lucy was rare. She was 6'3". She was 6'3" in high school. So she was 6'3", and she had a muscular frame. That was unusual. So you could have some tall females, but they wouldn't have the same kind of muscular frame Lucy had, which allowed her to dominate over other players, which she did. So Lucy left the first U.S. Olympic game, basketball game, scoring the most points for the United States team overall and grabbing the most rebounds overall. And so Pat Summers said about her, if Lucy Harris had not played with us, we would not have won that silver. So she was a force, and she was the tallest female on the U.S. team. She was 6'3", with somebody I think next to her was 6'2".
Wow, and that's really tall for back then, especially.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, right. Yeah.
I noticed in the book title, you decided to put "amazing" twice in the book title. Can you talk about what led to that decision?
She just won so many titles in such a short time. Her best years were her last 3 years. The first year was great also, but the last 3 years they won titles every year, back-to-back titles. And so they matched Immaculata. Immaculata had won 3 titles back-to-back. That's why everybody saw them as a team to beat. And when Lucy came back, when the team came back after they won the first time, the whole community was elated about it. It was just a big deal. But nobody thought they could do it again. And nobody especially didn't think they could do it against Immaculata. I mean, they basically said, even Coach Wade said herself, she wanted to stop the talk. She felt like a lot of people felt that this was a fluke. They couldn't do it again. So she and her assistant that summer put a schedule together, and they played some of the hardest basketball teams out there. She said toughest basketball team. She said we had the toughest schedule of anybody else, because she wanted them to understand we won that game because we had the skill and the know-how and the merit. And that second year, I think they lost 2 games, but they made it to the national, and they got there and they matched up with Immaculata again, which everybody knew was coming. But that year also they went to the Madison Square Garden. They ended up at Madison Square Garden. It was one of the first times that females had kind of dominated playing in Madison Square Garden. It was on television also. It was HBO, so you could buy the feed and watch it on television. And Delta State was the first school in Mississippi to be invited to the Madison Square Garden. And they probably were invited because they beat Immaculata, but right. You know, and then Lucy was there also. So they ended up playing Queens College at Madison Square Garden, and Lucy dominated. Just dominated. She ended up, her highest score in points were 47, and those points were the highest scored that year by any college or pro team in that arena. So she got a lot of, attention for that. And then that same year they went to the second national, and they ended up playing Immaculata. But this time they were more confident. They weren't as confident the first year, but this time they were, pretty confident, and they end up winning again, which stunned everybody. Right?
Let's go.
Right. It stunned everybody, and Lucy was the most valuable player. She was chosen again, and she was on All American team again. So then they go back, and Lucy has parades, and her high school celebrated Lucy, and the town that she had come from, Mentor City, celebrated her. They had this big celebration where the mayors and the Chamber of Commerce people and some of the people from Mississippi Valley came and spoke, and it was just a big deal. And then the last year, her senior year, they went back to the Olympics, and everybody thought it would be Delta State, because Delta State had earned a reputation of being a really good school at this point. Delta State and Immaculata, they thought those two schools would match up again, and everybody was looking forward to that matchup again. But out of nowhere, and I guess not out of nowhere because they were in the national, Louisiana State University came up and beat Immaculata. It stunned everybody. They had 2 players that had come from Australia, and both of them are over 6 feet, and both of them very, very good. And so Immaculata, for the first time in the 6-year history of their national organization, wouldn't play. And it just took everybody a minute to kind of get used to that, because they were that dominant. But Louisiana State University and those 2 freshmen who were over 6 feet was kind of scary to everybody. Everybody thought, okay, this is going to be tough for Delta State. But Delta State went in and started out with a bang. I think they started out with 6 points ahead of in the first part of the game, and they never let up. Louisiana State never came close to Delta State. It never even looked like they were competing. Delta State was just dominant. So they left with their 3rd national title. And Lucy got VP again, and then she got All-American again. So she was, but that just ended her career. I mean, she got a lot of awards and a lot of accolades after it. As a matter of fact, the Nesmith Basketball Hall of Fame, because she was not eligible to be inducted, asked for her jersey and information about her and information about Delta State, and they put her jersey a year after she graduated on display, even though she was not eligible to be there. But she has such a dominant influence over basketball during her tenure, they put her information on display. And Margaret Wade was really impressed with that also. Her coach, right? Yeah.
I'd imagine so. A trailblazer, completely transformed that university.
She did, and the game of basketball also, because the way she played the center position and the way she dominated the painted area, something else I had to find out about. The way she dominated the painted area, which had not been dominated like that before. changed the way other females played, and also changed the way coaches looked at females. Now they're looking for somebody 6'3" or taller, and they're looking for somebody with that kind of body strength that she had.
Right.
So her existence in the game changed the game, but also her way she played changed the game. So she was she really influenced, and she was foundational for women basketball.
100%. And talk about women's basketball today. Do you think we're moving in the right direction when it comes to recognizing women's sports?
Oh, I think so. And as a matter of fact, Lucy the WNBA didn't exist when Lucy graduated. They ended up, there was a pro basketball team that lasted about 3 years, and she played the first year in it, but she couldn't make any money, so she left, and it folded 2 years after her. But she lived long enough to see the WNBA, and she talked about that. Mm-hmm. She talked about how lucky the girls were to have that, and she didn't have it when she was graduated, and it sounded like she wished she had. Of course she did because she wanted to play basketball. But I think with all the superstars out there now, with Caitlin and Brittany and all those other, they're getting a lot of due respect, I think. But I think some of them don't know where it started. I mean, it didn't start with them. It started with people like Lucy Harris. Right. And so, but yeah, they've come a long way, and come a long way this year. So I just think it's just going to get better and better for females in basketball and in sports in general, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And finally, what is the lasting legacy? What would you say is the lasting legacy of Lucy Harris? Well,
her legacy, I think, is tremendous. She really changed the sport of women's basketball. She did it with a lot of dignity. I mean, she didn't brag about her skills. She knew she was good, and she was very aggressive in the game because she always wanted to win. That's one thing Michael Wade said about it. She wanted to win, and so she knew that she played her best game, they would probably win. But her the way she played was very influential, and the way she carried herself, I think, was very influential. But her style of playing just changed everything. It just did. It just changed everything. I mean, she was, not knowing enough about sports, I would think that there were females who played who were good at some things but not good at other things. Lucy was pretty much good at everything. She could shoot from long distances. She could play very well on the basket, under the goal, which was her skill. Mm-hmm. She said she was an inside player. But she also had, she set a record at Delta State for field goal attempts and field goals made. So, and then she also set a record for rebounds. And she had the most rebounds when she played in the Olympics. So, she was all around very good player, and I think that probably is what coaches started looking for later. They're looking for girls who could do everything,
right?
And that was because of Lucy Harris. So, yeah, she had a tremendous impact. Whether people know it now or not, she did.
Yes, ma'am. And finally, Dr. Lott, for anyone watching at home right now who want to get your book, where can they go to find it?
My book is available at Amazon, and it's also available now at Barnes & Noble. So anybody who wants to order a copy is there.
That's me. I will be getting one for sure.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Lott, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.